Connections peeps, how has 2020 been treating you? Stay out. Experiencing any anxiety or depression or overwhelm, or if you're like me, you're just wanting to kick your family out of the house for a few days, avoiding your problems and distracting are not going to help you bring that peace that you are looking for.
Hey friends, it's Katie from Without a Crystal Ball. Welcome back to my channel. It's Thursday, January 30th, 2025. Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt, along with a member or a continued devotee of Jodi Hildebrandt's connections, are in federal court. Well, at least they will be soon because they are being sued by a husband and ex-husband of one of the members. And this member is alleging racketeering, fraud, wire fraud, and viewing connections as an enterprise under the RICO federal statute. Yep, that's right. So Ruby Franke and Jodi Hildebrandt, who have been behind bars since 2023, are now facing a federal lawsuit filed in Utah. And the claimant here is looking for millions of dollars. And he's asking the court to bar this teaching from being implemented in homes. It's pretty wild. So the lawsuit is filed against Jodi Hildebrandt, Ruby Franke, and the company Connections Classroom. The lawsuit was filed earlier this month in Utah Federal District Court. And the plaintiff here, his name is Michael Robert Tilleman, and he appears to be in the middle of a pretty messy divorce and custody dispute with his ex-wife, who he claims remains a devoted follower of Hildebrandt, despite the fact that she's in prison. So it appears as though he's having some problems in the state of Utah getting this taken seriously, which is seriously odd given the fact that this is the same state that prosecuted the Hildebrandt Connections Franke crew back in 2023. At the crux of this entire lawsuit, they're alleging fraud. So he claims that Jodi Hildebrandt relied on individuals, including Franke, to recruit members to Connections, and then they would carry out Jodi's directives, and that the defendants would then offer material of self-improvement and group session counseling, classes, workshops, and digital written materials in exchange for lucrative fees. But then at the core of this argument is that these services, classes, workshops, lessons, and digital and written materials are fraudulent. And they claim that the enterprise, Hildebrandt and other members of the enterprise, including defendants, prey on individuals in vulnerable positions who are seeking legitimate mental health services and indoctrinate members into the enterprise, instructing her associates to perpetuate physical, mental, and psychological harm against anyone that doesn't align with Jodi's truth, what she claims is her truth. So anyone that doesn't agree will suffer harm. And it says, under the guise of providing help to those in need, Connections fraudulent services are intended to bring individuals under the enterprise's financial and psychological control, entice victims to spend money on fraudulently advertised services, which perpetuate and promote harm and other illegal acts. They encourage psychological harm, ultimately breaking families apart while enriching the defendant and further perpetuating the enterprise. The plaintiff then brings up the evidence against Hildebrandt and Franke when they were arrested in 2023 and harm that they caused to Ruby Franke's children as an example of what the teachings of Connections teach and instruct their members to do, and that Ruby herself was implementing Jodi's teachings on her own children. And like Ruby Franke, who sought out Jodi Hildebrandt, the plaintiff in this case says that his ex-wife also sought her out. A complaint says, plaintiff is one such individual severely harmed by the enterprise. Plaintiff and Savage were formally married during their marriage. Savage sought Hildebrandt for routine counseling. Shortly thereafter, Savage eagerly accepted Hildebrandt as her guide and joined the enterprise. Savage and Hildebrandt immediately identified plaintiff as an individual in distortion, upon whom they needed to inflict severe psychological harm to be brought into truth. It's that he goes on to say that she masterfully implemented the enterprise's dark teachings to physically harm and endanger their child, and now also implements their destructive practices to harm the plaintiff. It says even after Franke and Hildebrandt's arrests and convictions, Savage, a devoted associate of Hildebrandt and the enterprise, and she has staunchly refused to stop implementing Hildebrandt's warped teachings to discipline and harm their children and him. Immediately after the arrest and their convictions, he pleaded with her multiple times, his ex-wife, to discontinue the implementation of Hildebrandt's methodology on their child, and she refused. Uh, they allege that Savage, his ex-wife, continues to engage in criminal and torturous behavior against minor daughter and the plaintiff, demonstrating through her words and action that she willfully does so under the dark delusion, falsehoods, and dangerous and false methodologies promulgated by Hildebrandt. He claims, like other victims, like Adam Steed and other men that have had really nasty custody disputes with their exes and were torn apart by connections, that his ex-wife continues to use the legal systems and like loopholes in the law to spread misinformation about him, ruin his reputation, and that their ongoing litigation has been very equivalent to what other men have gone through that have been harmed by that. And so what he's hoping is that as a part of this, that even though Hildebrandt and Franke are incarcerated, he wants an injunctive relief to enjoin the enterprise from causing harm, as well as monetary damages caused by the defendants through the enterprise. The argument here, the summary argument, if I can put this in a summarized, condensed version, is that Hildebrandt is running an enterprise and that she's using self-help and mental health counseling and therapy. And then through this is selling products, and she's selling classes and books and therapy sessions and groups to help people with various needs, whether it's addiction or marital problems. And then through this, she promises that she will help people get in and live in truth. But what he says that she isn't doing, and what is deceptive here, is that Hildebrandt doesn't disclose that if the victim resists her authority and her counseling, that she and the enterprise members will seek to destroy the victim's life through defamatory actions, physical and emotional harm, manipulation, and isolation. And that as a result of this, she has engaged in at least 785 acts of federal wire fraud beginning at least by 2008 through August of 2023, and that the wire fraud on at least 732 occasions when hosting and publishing the Connections podcast, at least 27 occasions while hosting and participating in Connections panels via Zoom, at least 15 occasions when teaching Connections classes with Zoom. So the wire fraud is that she knows that this is false. She knows that what she's doing is false, and that it's a scheme to make money. And that every time she's asking someone to buy into something and they do, it's an act of wire fraud. And then he alleges that they use the money to help her enrich her lifestyle, like purchase property. And so she launders the money into property like the home that she purchased, which was, the multi-million dollar property where the kids actually escaped from. And that's in Ivins, Utah. And that at least millions of dollars were going into properties in different places to enrich her and further her enterprise. Another crime he claims the enterprise is committing is using the forced labor of the children or the adults in which they're harming, and forcing them to do things that benefit the enterprise and her. Like, for instance, when they were making Ruby's kids pull weeds and like clean and all of the work they had to do at her house because they were in distortion. And that's what he's likening it to the way the prosecutors called it, like a concentration camp or slave labor. He's also alleging that they were racketeering the money and laundering money and the proceeds of the money. And so he's claiming that Jodi Hildebrandt and her associate Pam Botcher were transferring funds that were being made that were, he claims, illegally obtained through this false teaching and this false program. and distributing it across bank accounts that were connected to Pamela Bocher, who's actually not listed as a defendant in this case. And then he says that all of the people that are involved in this case are using the money to further the enterprise. And the purpose is to sell fraudulent services through the enterprise to entice individuals to purchase the services provided by the enterprise, and then using and distributing the money to enrich themselves. So he claims that Franke, Hildebrandt, and Bocher did forced child labor, child torture, and keeping minors in the enterprise. The plaintiff in this case makes note that despite the fact that Ruby and Jodi are incarcerated, that Connection's social media presence remains active other than their YouTube page. So nothing else has been taken down. And so because of that, these videos, he claims, that remain live and available for consumption, and the fact that the podcast is still live and available for consumption, there's still this ability for them to cause harm to people. He also says that even though it's diminished their capacity to make money, all of this material is out there for the taking, and that there are still people that are devoted followers of this teaching, and they refuse to denounce Hildebrandt. And he says that his ex-wife is one of these people. He alleges that she won't stop no matter what kind of obstacle is put in her way, because every time she's received a consequence in the past, she's gone on to hurt other people. He references Jodi's niece, Jessie Hildebrandt, who reported Jodi to police. And then subsequently after that, Jodi went on to harm Adam Steed. He got it. She loses her license and it gets suspended. And then Jodi starts life coaching instead of psychology, working as under her mental health license. And so no matter what, she always finds a loophole. And so his belief is that even if she gets out of prison, it won't stop because she'll find a way to keep this going. He claims that his own life has been harmed because he claims that they interfered in his ability to work. They cut off access to his relationship with his daughter. He believes and argues that this enterprise is directly responsible for his divorce, and that, like other men that have gone through divorce, Jodi inserted herself and other people, and tactics that she instructs her followers to use were used against him in the proceedings, that this caused delays in the custody proceedings. His ex-wife used her methodology to unlawfully restrict him access to his daughter, that she used delay tactics, that he lost his job during the trial in 2020. He's had his employment be terminated as a result, and he's lost business as a result of it. He's lost earning potential because of it. His earning potential, he says, didn't actually recover until 2023. And between 2020 and 2023, he believes he's lost over $90,000 in income. He's had to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on legal fees to protect his reputation and to try to restore his relationship with his daughter. And he says that in 2022 alone, he incurred $105,000 in attorney's fees. He says that he's incurred property damage when he was married to his ex-wife. He claims that his ex-wife spent $5,000 of their marital assets on Connections programs. He alleges that his ex-wife has committed aggravated child abuse against his daughter. And this is a direct result of her teachings, because he says that his ex-wife is doing things to his daughter, which are because the daughter isn't living in truth, a lot like what Franke did to her kids. He says that he's incurred damage to his property as a result of these methodologies, and that she's used these teaching to cause harm to their daughter. He says that there's been medical costs for treating his daughter's injuries, which are a result of her abuse that she's implementing from the methodologies. He then finally alleges that when all of this started, when his ex-wife got involved with this group, he was in the process of getting accepted to law school. And that as a result of all this ongoing litigation and this continued fight to restore his reputation and these legal obstacles she keeps putting in his way because of the teachings of Hildebrandt, that he never went to law school. And he was accepted, he says, to the University of Chicago, University of Virginia, and the University of Michigan, all really good law schools. And that he's lost income because he never was able to finish school, and he suffered at least $1 million as a result of not being able to go to school. So, what he's claiming is he wants $2.5 million for each one of the claims. And in this lawsuit, there are 8 claims. Because there's 8 claims in this lawsuit, he's seeking around $20 million total, but that could exceed more than that because of the punitive damages that he's asking the court to award to him for the harm that they've caused. Everything is under the federal RICO statute. And so what he's doing is he's looking at the different illegal activities that someone commits under RICO. And one of those is that they derived income from this fraudulent activity. Because through a pattern of racketeering, they all worked together in consortium to make money for the enterprise. He also says that they conspired to violate the provisions of the RICO Act. The 8 claims, they vary in terms of what he's looking for and who he's filing them against. Some of them include Hildebrandt, Franke, and his ex-wife. Some are just Hildebrandt and connections. It depends on what it actually is. But I think the most interesting ask he has in all of this is that they order that all assets, capital, tangible property, and documentation in the possession, custody, or control of defendants shall be frozen pending further order of this court, and that defendants are hereby enjoined from transferring, selling, or in any way disposing of any and all assets, capital, and tangible property and documentation in their possession, custody, or control pending further order of the court, and that all defendants' affairs, assets, capital, tangible property, and documentation will remain in the present state as of this date. So I think the goal here is to get all of this crap that they have offline, stop it from spreading, hold the people accountable that haven't been held accountable yet. Although Pam Botcher is named in this lawsuit, she hasn't been sued by him. No charges were brought against her, but maybe exposing that there are still people devoted to Jodi's teachings, and these crimes are still happening even though she's behind bars. And it won't stop until we get rid of all of this curriculum and we freeze all of the assets. And there's no one benefiting from these teachings at all. I don't know how well he's going to do. I don't know if this will be successful. He names a lot of different people. It almost feels like this could be a class action lawsuit. I don't know if there's thought that maybe Jodi Hildebrandt joined and Adam Steed and these other victims that have been hurt by her. But in his case, it sounds like what he went through is a lot like what Kevin Franke went through, what Adam Steed went through, what David Bateman went through. So we'll have to wait and see. If you go to the Utah court system and you look at the court records, his wife has never been charged with any crimes. I want to put that out there. There's been no claims against him criminally either. Their divorce and custody case started in 2016, and in 2025, it's still ongoing to this day. And he just won an appeal, and he's asking for the court to help him, and apparently they're not helping him. So maybe this is another level of him trying to stop this from happening because the Utah courts aren't responding. It's a good way to expose what's happening and get attention by including everything and including Jodi and Frank and Ruby in this if he's being victimized. And it makes me wonder how many other people are continuing to be victimized by these teachings. These are civil complaints, they are not criminal complaints. And so no one is going to go to jail as a result of this. And so any of the names that I've referenced in here, just remember these are allegations in a court case. They are not proven yet in a court of law. And until they are proven at trial, they remain allegations. And so no one at this time is held liable. So what are your thoughts about all of this? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed, and click the bell so you never miss a video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye, everyone.